Welcome to Super Meat World. Into this update, we're gonna take things a little bit more slowly, and we're gonna play a little chapter in which you will be gently drifting through space. Fractal Worlds by RockLeeSmile. This is a pretty slow chapter in which you can take things to your leisurely pace. You can simply drift around all that you like, going into this nightmarish sky which is filled with all of those outwardly shapes and all filled with all of these really nasty saw blades that will simply kill you and will simply ruin your entire life. This is such a happy place for every memory to be born. Look at how happy this Look at how happy this place is. Oh my god. Okay, going into this little corridor right here is really a pain in the ass. Holy shit. Yeah, I really have to drop the gimmick here because this chapter, even though it's going really slow, it is everything but relaxing. In fact, it's really a hard chapter to play, and I mean that in pretty much the literal sense. Basically, RockLeeSmile decided to make an entire chapter based around the low gravity orb gimmick that you saw into one of his levels in The Passenger chapter. You remember this one level which was, I think, called Negative Mass, and in which you had to do really careful jumps through all of these narrow corridors while avoiding saw blades and all of this, while having this pseudo low gravity effect, which is really cool, but at the same time it's also really hard to deal with because it's pretty unpredictable. I mean, at the top of the screen like that, you can already see that there is no longer any low gravity, despite it being present in pretty much every single other part of the level. Much of the difficulty of this chapter revolves around dropping through these shafts, and basically you have to make sure that you're not hugging the walls because there is absolutely no way that you will fall through all of these corridors alive because, well, the effect of the gravity whelm will make it so that instead you will be simply floating up instead of going down. And yeah, for this one level, instead of trying to do wall jumps, you simply do a jump in the middle where you're not gonna be affected at a horizontal manner by the gravity orb, and you just dodge right in time in order to avoid the rotating turret. Essentially, this is what is really annoying about this chapter. The fact that the gravity orb makes it so that you're always shifting either left or right, and this makes control really hard to do. Actually, initially, I didn't want to do this chapter at all. I was just thinking about doing this for an update in which I will play all of these levels that I thought about doing but decided against it for some reason. But as I was editing my footage for this chapter, I actually came up with a complete playthrough of the chapter, so I was like, why not? Let's just make it its own update already, alongside with another one in order to pad things up a little bit, because this is a pretty short chapter, because there's only 10 levels into it, but then again, I'm not too sure that a 20 level chapter made out of this gimmick really will have worked well in the long run. 10 levels of this will be more than enough, especially considering that the difficulty for it ramps up pretty quickly. I mean, starting from this point, you'll be expected to pull off a lot of crazy jumps, especially the one at the start of the level. I mean, just look at how narrow this thing is, but at the same time, it's also really damn cool that you're able to do that. But yeah, essentially this is one chapter in which you'll need a lot of patience in order to figure out how the low gravity gimmick works, and also you need to remember that it doesn't work as well on the top of the screen for some reason. Essentially, you can see that the background for every single level is the same, but at the same time, it do lend the chapter a pretty good unity, as in, well, all of the levels use the same gimmick, you also have the same landscape, but there are a few changes in the decoration every now and then, and I have to say, I really like the look of the background that you see on the sides. It's really ominous and it's really creepy. Of all the chapter, this one level was the one that gave me the most trouble. This level is a pain in the ass. Not only you have to do a whole lot of really narrow jumps, but yeah, right here you have to make sure you're not hugging the wall whenever you're jumping, but yeah, the low gravity makes it so that you can jump fall down in order to grab keys, and then float up in order to go through the entire row of saw blades again without dying. But unfortunately, this is where you'll also see that the low gravity can also lend itself to some pretty annoying glitches, as in whenever you're trying to jump, you will simply not do it at all and you will simply spaz out in the middle of nowhere. We'll see a more clear example of it a little bit later. Now, getting up there is really not that hard, because you can see that there's a block up there, and basically it's stationed at the place where the gravity orb will make it so that you will no longer randomly shift left and right. But this thing doesn't apply whenever you're falling down from here. In fact, when I first played this level, I thought I was never gonna be able to do that. And in fact, on my first playthrough, I had to give up onto this one level, and I had to retry it again much later. Here we go! Oh my god! This part of the level is so hard because there's no way that you can stop yourself from going all of the time left and right. You can make it so that you're easily centered whenever you're on the ground, but you cannot do that whenever you're into the air because you have no friction whenever you run there. So this is why falling in the middle of the saw blades, and for such a long distance, this is what really makes this level really a pain in the ass. Right, steady now, here we go, we're done with this level. There's absolutely no way that I'll die on the rest of this level. There's a saw blade right here, but it's pretty easy to avoid. Oops, but you cannot avoid crashes, my good friend. It's actually been a while since the game crashed, I'm surprised. And this level, I really thought I was gonna spend an eternity on that one, but it turns out that the whole level was really not all that hard. Okay, maybe this portion of the level here is because, yeah, you have to drift through this tiny opening right here, and yeah, all of this is saw blades, by the way, just in case you couldn't tell. But yeah, I might as well break it to you, this is not easy to do, and not at all. In fact, I'm really lucky that it only took me 2 tries in order to beat this entire level. I was expecting to spend a whole lot more time in there, especially considering that I didn't have any practice on this one chapter, and I pretty much just was like, oh, I'm just gonna record this chapter in order to get some bits of gameplay, and it turns out I managed to beat the entire chapter. Oh, this is where you see that the gravity wells can fuck up the game's engine big time. Yeah, I cannot jump here because my character is too busy spazzing out on the floor. I don't know how to jump. And of course, you can also die to the turret whenever you're jumping up there, even though it's probably not into your intentions. This is just another one of these things that will rot your life. But yeah, I really have no clue why, whenever you're hugging the walls, you will be drifting up while being carried away by the gravity wells, but the moment that you jump off from them at the top of the screen, you're not carried anymore by any kind of anti-gravity. Oh, this level, however, is a disaster waiting to happen. I really hate this level. It may not be a big level, but you can be sure that this is a level on which you'll spend a very long time trying to beat. You have to master the art of jumping down from a ledge right here in order to drift all the way to the middle of the tunnel right here in order to carry on through one part of the level, because otherwise it will be impossible to fall through there. And of course, you cannot get this key down here from this little tunnel which is below me, because the upward momentum from the gravity well will prevent you from doing so. Jesus Christ, I just want this key. Is there a way for me to go back down? Oh, okay, thank you. At least I'll grant this level one thing. You cannot die in it, unless there's some kind of freak accident which will make you teleport out of the level due to lag or something like that. You will not die during this level. Which might be for the best, considering that beating this level will take you upwards to 2 or 3 minutes. And did I tell you that you need a lot of patience in order to play this chapter? Because, yeah, I just thought that you might want to know that. Yeah, right now I want to get up for the key here, but I cannot jump because once again I'm spazzing out. Yeah, there's just way too many random things which happen into this one level that makes it a total chore to play. Yeah, it's really bad when you have to say that in order to make it through the normal level, you have to use editing. Yeah, I needed to use editing because otherwise I'm pretty sure that most people will have stopped watching this level at some point because it's taking me far too much time. Yeah, we're up to 4 minutes and counting upward. Yeah, I'm just gonna cut all the way back up at the beginning of the level where you have to jump from up there once again in order to get the downward momentum that you need in order to get to the end. And as a reward, you get no replay because it took you way too much time to beat this level. Good job, you hero! And that'll be it for Fractal Worlds. A pretty interesting chapter for sure, but whether you'll want to play it or not is up to you, because it has a pretty specific appeal and it's definitely not for everyone. So let's move on to part 2 of this programming. We're gonna play another chapter which once again we cannot find into the recommended chapters list. Wow, it's really on a roll of being absolutely useless ever since a couple of updates. So in order to have a little bit more padding in order to get a full 20 level update, I'm gonna play another chapter which is entitled Bloody Forest. Unfortunately, this is another one of these chapters which I don't know the author. Or well, it's the first chapter which I don't know the author because, well, I didn't know who made Sea Meat Boy initially, but thanks to some people on YouTube, as well as one of RockLeeSmile's Let's Play Super Meat World videos, I eventually figured out that the guy who made the Sea Meat Boy was _hell_, aka the Super Meat Boy chapter creating robot that made Super Meat Land 2 as well as Super Meat Land 1, which I'll cover in the next video, but yeah, that's another matter. So yeah, Bloody Forest is a pretty good forest chapter. Definitely not the best one that you'll see out there, and in fact what you're staring at right now is probably the poorest level of the entire chapter, because I really don't like how the camera is zoomed in so much, and finally you have these saws which barely protrude out, and the final saw is partially obscured by all of the lighting that you see. It blends in really well with the yellow light. This is definitely the poorest point of the chapter, and yet it still gets rated 4 stars. Wow, my rating system really is matching new grounds out of a sudden. Or maybe it always did. Oh my god, what is happening to me? Okay, now let's move on. This, however, is my favorite level of the entire chapter. I really like the aesthetic behind all of the art direction for this level, and this is also a level which plays really well in the end. Oops, somebody ran out of characters once again, just like I did into my own chapter. But we're gonna enjoy those first ray of sunshine indeed. In fact, what the hell is a sunshine anyway? Will that be whenever you're going outside and basically you're just pointing your chin on the sun and it finally gets creamed and... no, I'm not even gonna go there because this is going absolutely nowhere. Like I said, I really don't know what to say about this game anymore. There's just been so many levels and so many things that eventually you lost track all of them all. It's a nice chapter, but I have to say there are some anomalies into the level design which really makes me hate the chapter at some time. I mean, there are some places where you'll see some random cavern protrusion which really don't serve any kind of purpose and just get in the way and just makes the gameplay a little bit less immediate and a little bit more sluggish. And there's also a couple of levels in which you see slopes as you're going through the main level course, and most people who play this game for a significant amount of time will know that slopes for this game are really damn buggy at times. Wow, this level really reminds me of one of the original levels into the game. I think it's 112X? Yeah, the way that the level is shaped and its artistic design really reminds me of that one level from the game, especially the Dark World version. And I have to say, I kinda like the 4 rotating saw blades that you see on the left, even though they're really easy to avoid. It's a pretty gentle chapter for the most part. I really wouldn't say it's a better chapter than Yellowstone because, well, the art design for the chapter is not as good and the difficulty isn't quite as compelling, but for most people it'll be far more accessible, and finally, well, it still remains a pretty fun chapter, and considering how rare good forest chapters are for the most part, this is one of those diamonds in the rough, and I figured this is why it had to be showcased. That, and finally, it's such a short chapter that it really deserves to be showcased into its entirety as you're playing through all of it, because there's no real point in skimming through it randomly every once in a while. We're gonna save this for the next update. This final jump can be pretty tricky, but with some careful enough jumping, you'll be able to do it without too much problem, like most of the things that you'll be able to do into this one chapter. The only thing that I don't like from this one level is that it's a little bit too dark, and yeah, the other level right after that is way too bright. But yeah, when I'm whining about slopes, this is what I'm talking about. I'm just wanting to move a little bit more, but here we go. Instead, I'm falling into the fire or the icy fire. I really don't know, but yeah, either way, it kills you whenever you touch it. With that said, even though it's not really a hard chapter, the last 2 or 3 levels can be pretty tricky. This one level, for instance, has a couple of really tricky jumps. Yeah, compared to most of the things that you had to do into this one chapter, this vertical shaft is definitely something else. Somebody's definitely been playing way too much of that one Dark World Forest level in which everything was turned white. But here, it's a whole lot longer and harder. And here we go, the final level, and I gotta say it's a pretty fitting way to end the chapter, even though I think that in this one level the background could have been a whole lot more darker, because it kinda clashes against the level, because it's a little bit too bright. But I really gotta say I like the bridge that you see into the middle of the level. We're gonna see it again a little bit later as I make my way all the way back here. If you want to, you can rush this level without having too many problems, because it's straightforward enough in order to do that, but you can simply take your time and simply breeze through this one level. This is one level which is hard mainly because of its length, and this one section which can be pretty tricky. Yeah, the background for this one level might be nice, but there are some parts, I mean, come on, why will I be stuck underneath there? There's absolutely no reason to be stuck there, because it just makes the entire gameplay feel less fluid than it should have. But enough pet gripes. We're finally done with this one chapter, and it's a pretty nice breath of fresh air from all of the bad forest chapters that you'll see on Super Meat World for the most part. Coming up next, we're gonna have a grab bag of a whole lot of other Super Meat World chapters that are simply not gonna be fully showcased.